Anne-Marie comes from the Parsons School of Design in New York City. You may want to say a little bit more about the backdrop to all of that. We just want to hear what Anne-Marie has to say. And I'm going to say, really approach this with open minds, folks. This is an opportunity to think really differently and creatively, inspired by Anne-Marie. So over to Anne-Marie, and we'll see how we get on, and we'll take it from where we get to you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So I'll go into my background, but first we're going to do little slides to kind of hopefully inspire you thinking a little bit. I'm glad that the presentation before talked about empathy and a lot of different things of self-awareness. I think that actually is a nice little way to enter. So I called my presentation Design for Peace, because it's essentially, I think, of this higher level conversation, what everyone is trying to do, whether it's a marital conflict, political conflict, or just a local community. So I'm really inspired by that. So when we see the word and hear the word design, I challenge you to think about what that really means to you, because I feel like a lot of people have certain ideas of what this word means, right? Perhaps the first thing we probably think about is this image. We can probably, hopefully we can see it. It's probably going to be difficult with the light, but we see Apple products probably, right? A mouse, a Mac, headphones. That's lots of what we think about. And mostly probably because Steve Jobs has been really proficient about the design and how that's influencing business and society, and probably in this image. Beautiful, curated image. A lot of us probably think this is design, right? Or another image. An image of interior decorating. Magazines, picture of the chairs. Again, beautiful curation, aesthetics, right? But probably a lot of times we all think of design. This is probably the most recognizable picture when we hear the word design, right? Colors, textures, and images of models running, walking down the runway. That's also probably what we think of design. But I'm challenging you to probably think of design in a little bit different way. That perhaps we can see design as a process. As students gathered here in a generative process, figuring out, discovering solutions, asking questions. And a product of that, brainstorm. Detailed, reviewing stakeholders, thinking creatively, looking at different solutions. Again, design in a slightly different way than we probably would think of it normally. More images of what we would call a design process. And some might even say, which when I presented this before, that it's hard to tell because it's a little light, but theory of relativity. Someone asked, it sounds like you're doing something very science related, which in many ways this actually was a brainstorm about a community development project. But there was a design process involved. Similarly, you have also well-being, skills, workforce well-being. Again, this in many ways is also a design process. So what I'm here to help and challenge that thinking is that the most exciting things here in the 21st century is not going to happen because of technology, because I think we're all thinking that is going to be that future, but perhaps it actually is an expanding concept of what it means to be human, right? I think we're all here trying to do that in many ways, being experts in dispute resolution. I'm not an expert, a mediator, I'm here to tell you that, but hopefully we're going to try to bridge those thinkings and help kind of challenge the way that we think about what we're doing here. So this quotation by an individual, if anyone is in the sustainability environment, cradle to cradle, the upcycle, William McDonough, I was really inspired by this, that human beings don't have a pollution problem, we have a design problem. And if we're able to think of things at the beginning of that process more intelligently, we'd actually have products, services, experiences that actually work for us all. We wouldn't have scarcity, we wouldn't have many of the ills that we're actually discovering because of probably design problems. One specific incident he actually talks about, which is quite interesting, is why do you need a warning label on a hair dryer, right? I think we've probably seen it, don't use this in the bathroom, which is interesting. And when he talks about that, we should actually be designing that to not have that problem. In many ways, that regulation is a sign of a design failure, which is interesting, right? That's in my view. And so this convergence of law and policy, I was an attorney at the University of Florida, and I studied law, and what I was really inspired was taking a products liability course and doing corporate malfeasance, because that actually made me interested in kind of looking at design defects, and then started doing litigation as a result of that. But then as a result of just seeing kind of things that they were designed at the beginning of that process, whether it's the designing of a company, how we organize people, or actual products, or actually urban planning, how we create and organize ourselves in a community. This is actually thought about a little bit at the beginning. And it really doesn't matter to us, right? Who, is it just lawyers, or is it just designers? Like, who are we bringing into that conversation? That inspired me to look into politics. That's why the policy is there. I was part of the Obama campaign, which was the first one, which is part of that experience. I worked with economic development organizations as well. But then about 5 years ago, I started studying design. And again, to understand a little bit the process of why we have the things that we have around us and who's responsible for that. Because if many, in my view, many siloed conversations are happening and organizing around us, we're not kind of bringing a lot of people together to kind of organize and design our world around us. So we have all these assumptions of what design is. And those are the images that I showed you earlier, that it's merely aesthetics, is it really marketing? Because a lot of times we do think that that's the main intentions of that, or it could be paternalistic. How we are actually organizing ourselves and designing our communities to make sure that we have one view that's being articulated. So many people think actually design is probably paternalistic. But it's an important thing that we actually don't realize is that there's an intentionality in design. Whether it's an algorithm that's in many of our technology products that we have, that has a biased algorithm, there's intentionality into that, right? Human beings are the ones that are creating all of our products, services, or experiences. So in many ways, there's values that are provided in the design process, right? So that's the convergence. But I'm trying to kind of bridge that for you guys of law and policy and the design perspective, is that there is intentionality there. And with the process that you guys are doing of creating laws, many of you involved in policy, what is that intention that you're bringing into that? What are the values? Are these values, they need to be challenged. So this expansion of what it means to be human is something that's actually happening on this kind of ground, lower level, and I would say the educational institutions that were involved in a long time ago, and it involves different kind of processes and thinking. An early example of this is Georgetown Law, and I think we probably know Georgetown Law School. They actually published an article, and many people are doing this, using design thinking in the legal process, which is actually shows you that there is a paradigm shift of how we're trying to change the way we're thinking and breaking silos of a lawyer, a designer, these types of silos. Another image, these are law students at Stanford trying to use the design process to map out opportunities, to look at legal issues in a slightly different way, which I think is quite interesting because it's showing a paradigm shift of how we're educating the younger generation, but also these are going to be the future leaders. And they're trying to understand what are the values, what are the intentionalities of what they're actually trying to look at in legal issues. Here's another image. But what's the most interesting part is that these are design students. These are my students, the class a couple years ago, actually last year. And it looks very similar to what legal students are doing. And so what I think that's so interesting is to show the paradigm shift of what's going on in the education system. And the more we actually start understanding each other and using maybe similar process, at the very end of what we're trying to do or trying to accomplish, it'd actually be less conflict when you think about it, because we're all coming together with a very similar process. This is also my design students. I teach a regulatory and ethical context course. And the graduate program I teach in is merging design discipline and also business discipline. Again, to kind of really reimagine the paradigm shift that's going on and this realization that it's going to take a bunch of different individuals from different disciplines to kind of solve the systemic challenges that we're facing today. So it's interesting that design students are talking about protecting IP, business modeling. This is happening at a design school, which a lot of people would say, what does that have to do with that? So again, challenging our thinking of what this means. Looking at challenges, organizing a company, calling it Human Inc., right? This is another design students. After already doing the design process, creating a project that actually gets people to think about in their own communities about how do we create happiness. And this is specific to an elder community, actually, to see how do we actually, they realized it was a depression issue, and how do we engage people in a different higher level conversation rather than a typical conversation. So gamification, right? How do we design a better conversation and have people interact on a different level, on a more informal level, rather than a lot of the formal systems that we're used to engaging and interacting with, right? This is also interesting in terms of how they presented a solution. And I give them morality in how they can actually present. Once they've provided a paper and they've done the research, they decided to show us via a smoothie solution. They presented their solution via ingredients all representing different things. Again, to show you the evolution of how law students are now doing that design process, but maybe later down the line, they're also developing the solutions in a more creative and a more interesting way to help people from different cultures or different perspectives really understand something quite a little bit differently. So what I spoke to earlier about students being in a generative process, and that's what this quotation speaks to. She's one of my mentors at the Pratt Institute in New York, which is a design school. And she talks about that generativity requires creativity. But a lot of times when we say creative, because I do believe in creative leadership, it usually means individual, right? That it's just an individual thing, and freedom of expression and creativity. But actually, generativity is about being collaborative, right? And really focusing on new possibilities. And this idea that it's expressed in a way that we counter each other and the intentions we have toward each other. I think especially in this group, I think we're really cognizant of that. What intentions do we have toward each other when we're in the process that you guys involved in your work? So this word integration, which I think everyone would probably recognize being in this community, that there's 3 ways to resolve a conflict. And again, different theories probably, but dominance, compromise, and integration. And the reason I put this word here is that from the definition of Mary Parker Follett, who's a management expert, but also has had some, with the conflict resolution group, is that she would describe discovering creative, ways that work for all parties. And the reason I relate this to design is that design thinking also works in that way. That it's ultimately an integrative process. So it's IDEO consultancy. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's in California. Probably a few Californians have. They have a process where to help design a solution, they have perhaps a doctor in a room, an anthropologist in a room, an engineer in a room, a designer in a room. And this is this idea that a paradigm shift is changing. To have many different voices come together and to have completely different opposing ideas, but with that, you actually have something completely different and creative and might actually be representative of what this true nature is. So that's why I wanted to highlight those 2 levels of thinking. And perhaps the individuals in this group can be that bridge to bring their integrative thinking in and to bring different industries in, to have a different idea of how to solve these systemic challenges. So this idea to break formal barriers, right? That we're not just a lawyer, not just a designer. That's why I was really inspired at the last presentation in that way to use our empathy skills to finding our passion. I think it's really well suited to this new paradigm shift that's going on. It's happening. And if we haven't recognized that it's happening, this is probably the time to really recognize that. And maybe allowing these informal spaces that actually allow for acceptance, allow for creativity, for iteration, right? And ultimately allow for positive futures, right? When you have this ability to allow for mistakes, to allow for a little bit of informality, you allow for people to have the idea that there's another positive future with that. So can we, with that, design for peace by designing for trust, right? What are we talking about? I work now for a social enterprise. It's a hybrid social enterprise that was started by a Buddhist monk, priest, right outside of New York City. And this is their Zen community that they started. Initially started for the purpose of having his Zen community understand the value of work, the value of interconnectedness, the value of being present. And with that, over an evolution of now 36 years, decided to start hiring individuals in this community that are outside of the Zen community and do hiring without judgment. So now we employ formerly incarcerated individuals to help bake brownies. So if anyone has heard of Grayston, which you probably have not, that's the company I work for, but you probably have heard of Ben & Jerry's. I'm not sure. You have that in here. We are the company that bakes the brownies for this company, for this brand, specifically for this brand, but also for different, I think they also have brownies in different other ones. And so through the value of non-judgment that we had, uncertainty, love and kindness, which were the values that this company had at the very beginning through the founder of being a Buddhist monk, these gentlemen, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, were the individuals who said, you know, we really like those values. We believe in non-judgment as well. We believe that the world can be slightly different. We believe that you're doing really interesting things in the community. Let's get together. So not only is this the future of business, but hopefully the future of even a broader systemic change to kind of influence how we interact with people to share values. If you're going to stand up for something in terms of what you believe in, then you're actually going to find partners that are pretty profitable. So what I've been hired to do, what I'm curious to even hear that from this group, is can we expand this concept of radical acceptance in terms of having formerly incarcerated individuals come in without any judgment in the United States. It's a pretty big problem in terms of we have about 20,000 statutes and regulations that actually prevent individuals from getting gainful employment. And a lot of times they're hidden barriers. For example, a welder. Right? There could be a welding company that would be happy to hire you if you seem to be a good welder, but you need a state certificate, right? A license. But to gain a state license, you need a background check. So kind of these very entry-level jobs that we might seem that be, you know, for us, we would probably never want these jobs. These are jobs that actually people can help sustain themselves. So kind of having this idea in the back of our mind, we believe in a world where people belong. Anyway. So if anyone understands or sees this branding, probably don't recognize it yet. But maybe you recognize this gentleman and Airbnb. So Airbnb did a very interesting thing, whether we agree with Airbnb or not, they designed for trust. They have this quotation that we started about 10 years ago, and you think about it, really think about that they actually revolutionized trust. Now, many of us probably don't think of it as a big deal, but imagine a time when you were just trying to just stay at someone's house, a complete danger, right, that was a stranger. And that's exactly what he talks about. He's actually someone who graduated from design school. And again, this whole paradigm shift of designers looking at the world slightly differently and saying, maybe I can design for trust. Maybe I can help people overcome the thought that that person is a stranger to me, and I should let them in their house. So Airbnb designed for trust. So I'm here to ask you, can we also design for trust as well in many different industries, right? Can we formalize informality, right? In terms of all these formal systems we have, can we allow a little informality to not only help the individuals in our community, and I would say in the community that I work in, individuals who have a lot of barriers to employment, but think of the other institutions that you might think could deserve a little informality, right? And by doing that, can we expand the concept of humanity and enable trust and acceptance? This is, I think, what all of us are going through in terms of locally, internationally, is this tension of the opposites, right? This conflict of values. And in many ways, this is what we're having too when I'm going and I'm talking about what we call open hiring in my company, about radical acceptance, radical trust, opening the workforce to individuals that might have criminal records, even though they've actually transformed their life. We're asking companies to take on risk in many ways. And that's the being a room full of lawyers who would ask, yeah, why would I expose my company to risk? But in many ways, if you don't have the human resources systems that already protect your employees or protect communities around any kind of ill will that you're thinking that individuals might be able to do, then you probably don't have a strong system to begin with, right? So that's what I'm here to help challenge that in many ways, these are the conflicting values. How do we manage that conflict, right? Another quotation by Mary Parker Follett that I really believe in. I hope this is something that we can explore and you can help investigate this, that we always actually hope to have conflict, right? Because with that conflict, it's an opportunity, right? A reinvention of a value system, right? And at the end of the day, hopefully, that we actually have an expanded concept of what it means to be human, right? When we learn from creative industries to design for trust, in many ways, to trust each other, to the grander scheme of having a system, an organization, that then hopefully designs for peace. Because once we've kind of come together, had peace, we can have a slightly better world, I hope. That's it. Thank you.